All right, well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel on traditional Indigenous ecological knowledge. My name is Abel Gomez, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow in the Native American Studies Department at the University of Oklahoma. I'm speaking to you today from within the traditional territory of the Caddo and Wichita peoples in an area that is known today as Oklahoma City. We have a really special panel for you all with three Native leaders. We have some questions prepared, and then we will open it up for questions from you all. So feel free to add questions in the comment section, and we'll try to get to as many as we can with the time that we have allotted. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our panelists and ask them to introduce themselves.
Mrs. Stu, Ka'inkara Carla Muñoz, Gaha Costanoan Rumsen Carmel tribe, Gaha Ohlone. I'm calling today and speaking to you from the Serrano Tongva area in Southern California, but I actually live and reside in the village of Ilamu in San Francisco. I'm super excited to be here, Gaha Masisa Mane, and what I am is a tribal councilwoman to the Costanoan Rumsen Carmel tribe, and also youth facilitator and a tribal liaison. So thank you for allowing me to be here and sharing this space with such beautiful women.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Meely. I am a Navajo, Pomo, Choctaw, and Coast Miwok. I live here in Santa Rosa with my children, and I am in Southern Pomo and Coast Miwok territory. I have one of the hardest jobs. I'm a mother, but I am going to school for my associate's degree in Native American Studies. I'm a woman of many talents. I basket weave, I sew, I do beading, I do traditional regalia. So yeah, I do a lot of things, and I'm happy to be here with you guys. I'll pass to Carla. Desiree, sorry.
Mrs. Duke, everyone, Gaha Masisa Mane, Gaha Costanoan Rumsen Carmel tribe, Gaha Rumsen Ohlone. So hello, everyone. I'm from the Costanoan Rumsen Carmel tribe. I'm very happy to be here with you all. I'm actually calling in from my car. It's the Ohlone ride, but I'm going to say that I'm actually calling in from Serrano territory as well. But I reside now in Kumeyaay territory. That's where I live, but I am from the Costanoan Rumsen Carmel tribe. I'm a facilitator and I am a tribal liaison for my people. So I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So today we're talking about traditional Indigenous ecological knowledge, and I'm wondering if you all would share what this term, traditional ecological knowledge, means for you, and maybe a little bit about why the environment, land, water is important to you.
Okay, so traditional ecological knowledge to me is the relationship that we have to the land. To me, it goes back hundreds of thousands of years of being in the same space and understanding what those plant medicine, what the animal medicine gives to you and how to tend to that. And so that's where traditional ecological knowledge comes in. And that's not teachings, it's something that comes from a book. It comes from experience of gathering from the land, from understanding migration of the birds, from understanding the different seasons of the plants, and when you're able to gather them and not gather them. And that comes down from generation to generation, and that's traditional ecological knowledge. But of course, when things change and time changes, then that knowledge is still powerful, but then we adapt to changes. So the traditional part, is something that we believe in, but of course nowadays with modern restrictions, I think that it's harder and harder to practice the traditional part. And so, but it's definitely your relationship to the land. It's how you give back and how you're surviving in harmony with. And so I forgot what the second part of the question was.
It's about why land environment is important to you.
Oh my gosh, why is land environment important to me? Well, let me tell you, it's because of living in that area and understanding that my ancestors had a relationship with that land and kept it so beautiful. And the fact that their prayers went into it. And I am a direct survivor of that lineal tie, and I can still have that relationship to the land. And so that's what gets me excited. And of course, being so distant from it, growing up in Southern California, it was always a dream of mine to get back to my ancestral homeland. So now that I'm there, I definitely, it's important to me because we always had all these songs and ceremonies for the land and for the people. And now to like put that to actual practice, oh my gosh, it makes my heart so happy. So I definitely think it's very important to have that because it also makes you walk in balance. Once you know you're from some place and you have a responsibility to that place and to the community, then I feel that it definitely makes you stronger as an individual, and it gives you a sense of belonging.
Me next. So when I grew up, I didn't grow up in my territory. I actually grew up in Yosemite, where it was Sierra Miwok territory. And even though I grew up knowing their culture and traditions, it wasn't my home. It was my home, but it wasn't. And I wanted, and I yearned for cultural knowledge of my own people. And I remember somebody telling me, you have to go home to where your people are from to be able to learn those things. So about 10 years ago, actually this October, I moved back to Santa Rosa, and I just got, overwhelmed and was given so much knowledge about where I came from, about village sites, about learning plants and harvesting for baskets and medicines. I finally feel at home. I can go to Yosemite as a visitor, and I know that's where I grew up, but that's not my home. Right here in Santa Rosa and Tamales Bay and Bodega, because I've harvested in those areas, that's my home, and I have a tie to it because my hands were in the dirt, looking for roots, looking for medicines, and I'm taking care of this land, this place, because it's going to take care of me. Why is the environment so important? I think a lot of people, and I'm sad to say, we get so focused on social media and, life is so fast, we forget about Mother Earth. We forget that she needs to be taken care of. And as Native people, that's what we did, because we were always out in nature and paying attention, to the birds and the animals and the plants. And being a basket weaver and being out all the time, I see so much change that's happening. It's kind of sad. The seasons are changing faster than normal. I see, like now we have a drought. The acorns are falling soon, too soon. They're supposed to be, in the middle of October, the end of October. A lot of the plants are drying up because there's not enough water. How do I say this? We need to take care of our environment because it takes care of us. When the pandemic happened, one of my biggest worries, well, what happens if stores close? What happens if pharmacies close? So I had to tap back into my roots of what I remember growing up, and I need to go find those acorns. I need to go find those medicinal plants to take care of my family. And because, my community is not really paying attention to those plants and animals, I see a lot of sickness. And if we don't start taking care of that, that's going to make us sick. Whatever we put in the ground, we take and we eat and digest, and that's going to harm us. So it's super, super important that we start paying attention to these things. I'll pass it to Des.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Yes, so what does this phrase, traditional ecological knowledge, mean to you? And on a related note, why is land and water important to you?
So I think that growing up, I kind of always I didn't have to find out who I was. I was benefited and I was more knowledgeable in who I was and identifying, because like our parents and our grandparents, they knew who they were, but it wasn't accepted necessarily to be who you want to be. And I think that that's where tradition starts, because you know you're influenced by those generations before you, and whatever you know, you influence those next generations. And so I feel like that's where tradition starts, is by identifying yourself to being traditional and living in this modern day society. And I think that um it's just something that is in your indigeneity. You know, my grandpa always says, you know, I'm not an Indian, I'm not a native, I'm Aboriginal. And I thought about that. I was like, well, grandpa, well, what does Aboriginal mean to you? He's like, that means that we were always here, and when you put us in the ground, you know, we're gonna stay here, and we've been here, and we're not gonna go anywhere. There's no break of a tie, even though we're not ancestrally, you know, we're ancestrally there, but we're not in that place anymore. You can't take that away from our, you know, identity, you know, in that sort of way. And I think that that's super important, to know who you are and what you identify as a tradition. You know, not only rigging up and getting ready for a ceremony, but you got to know where, like our relative was saying, like, where are these plants at, where are these animals at, to have that connection with them. So when you start singing those songs and you start dancing, you're saying a prayer to them, because it all makes its way back to each other. And so I think that it's super important, because, you know, growing up, I grew up in Southern California, super away from my ancestral land. And I still haven't won the cultural lottery to move to Carmel and Monterey. It's just so out of reach, I feel, because it's so populated, but it's so rich. And I only landed in San Francisco off of a job, and look at what happened there. It got too out of reach, and it cost too much. So I had to come back to Southern California, where it's more affordable. So I think that to always keep in mind of who you are and where you come from is super beneficial to your identity and to the cultural knowledge in your environment that you create in yourself. So that's why I think it's important.
There's so much richness in what was just shared. And Desiree, I'm thinking about a quote from your grandpa that I actually give to my students. One of the things that he said, there's a documentary where he's speaking, and he says, Indigenous means to me that for thousands of years we lived on this land, and we hunted and we prayed. And when we died, we became part of the land and the rocks and the trees and the animals and everything that you see. And I always give my students that definition to think about, like, how do Native people speak about their own relationship to land? And so on that note, I'm curious, since many people who are listening in probably are not maybe very familiar with Indigenous understandings of the world, I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about one thing that you wish non-Native people knew or understood about Native relationships to land. And so
yeah, I'm sorry. I think that it's important to understand, first of all, that our relationship to land is within us. It's instilled in us, it's taught to us, but we know it and we feel it, and we have a longing for a connection to it. And every Aboriginal person or Indigenous Indian that I know has that within inside of them, and that longing for the land. And I think that's important for non-Indigenous people to understand, that we have that within us to connect. It's like a natural right of being just a human being species, is to connect in an authentic way. And so because of the limitations of modern day, we may no longer have access to our cultural resources. These cultural resources become valuable. They become commercialized. They become tourist attractions, if you will. And I feel like the more that we want to connect, the more there is a disconnect, because we're constantly having to ask permission to go to these maybe public parks or land trusts or private lands that may have these cultural resources that we need. And so to me, I think it's important for non-Native community to, if you have the resource, share it. If you know about how to access these spaces, get in touch with your local Indigenous community, because our relationship to the land is important. And within modern society and modern sciences, there's always been this need to look at nature and not necessarily interact with it. And I feel like for us, we were always placed within it. We never left it. And so I think that's important to know also, is that we are connected to the environment, and it's important for our everyday being to get the oxygen from the trees, to get the water, and to be able to clean and cook ourselves, and cook ourselves, I'm sorry. But, it's very important to have that relationship for our survival. And the Indigenous people who are responsible for that land, you need to know that when you see us out there and we're gathering, or you see us out there and we're offering prayer, let us be. Don't interrupt us. Don't ask any questions. That's our time to connect with the land. And I feel like a lot of non-Native people, when they see us gathering in a certain spot, of course, we don't do it on trails or, by the roadsides, because that's just what we learned now to adopt. But if people do see you, they have all these ridiculous questions for you. There's all of these things, and it's not something that we might want to share sometimes. Sometimes these things are learned knowledge. And so it's not for everyone. We have to give to get these teachings. And sometimes there's songs and tobacco and ceremony that's offered in these sharing of understanding and knowledge, and that you don't want to just hand over to anyone, because these are precious teachings. And so that is what I would like non-Natives to understand also, is that some things are guarded because we need them. We need that protection for ourselves. And also, if you see us with our shells, please leave us alone. Let us pray in peace.
Oh, I have to agree with that. And for them to be open-minded. And please, please, please don't just go up to any Native person and try to touch their jewelry, their earrings, their hair, their feathers. That is so, so sacred. It's not a costume. It is a way of protection. It's protecting us from evil entities. It's protecting us when we are out gathering, so we don't get bit by a snake, or run into an ant trail, or whatever. I say, if you guys have questions, be respectful of your questions. We're not going anywhere. You guys aren't going anywhere. So we have to get along. And I feel like people that have more have more learning behind it, have a better understanding. When you see a Native person out there praying, to give them that respect and to leave them alone. And I think maybe we should say that more. Because some people will do interrupt in a song, or I feel like sometimes people feel they're entitled, just because ceremony might take place at a public location, to still be respectful, and that we have boundaries that we would like for you guys to respect.
I would just want to piggyback off of my sister and my relative, is that, a lot of non-Native people, they don't understand that, like, it's not a game or anything, I want to say like that, or that we're actual people. I think that when they see us, they're like, oh, wow, this ancient thing that just came out of a book. I just want to know everything, and I want to touch you. And it's like, if I wasn't in my regalia, you wouldn't know who I was. And that's why they think that, oh, well, do all Native people look like you? Or are you really Native? Or I didn't know. I know when I was younger, a teenager, and I had all my piercings, everyone's like, well, did Natives have piercings? It's like, come on, like, what kind of question is that? You know what I mean? It's like, think about what you say, but then think about boundaries in general. Like, we're a human being, and would you just come up to somebody? Would you want me to go up to you and be, oh my God, look at your purse, I really like it, or snatch your glasses off your face? Because people have taken my headdress off before. And it's like, how can you like do that? You know what I mean? And I know it's like common sense. The people that are on here, you all are very well educated. Like, you know, my relative was saying, Robin, like a lot of people that are educated and that way they know, but some people don't. And they're not kids that are doing this. These are like grown adults, like wanting to like see your regalia and hold your regalia and touch you. And I think that just personal space and boundaries are like a thing. Who knows what it'll be like now with COVID? Maybe people will not want to be by you, and maybe that's a good thing for us.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just feel that just to have that respect for people, and people who work in the parks, people who are park rangers, people who are educators in outdoor spaces. I think that you should know when you see an Indigenous person, obviously, you know what they look like. They're always with some type of coastal bling on them. They give some indicator of who they are, that they belong there. And don't go up to them and interrupt their prayer, their ceremony. You know, I understand you have a job to do, but do it in a respectful way, because I know that that's the number one thing that always happens to me and my sister. We're the lucky ones. We're the ones that meet all the rangers, and we get all the red tape, and we get all the tickets in the world for just gathering and praying on our own land. And that's just our right as an Indigenous person to that area. I feel it's a right that we have to be there. How can somebody say you can't be at your house? You could only be there from 8 to 5. No, why do I have a time limit? Like, the creator gave me permission to be here. That's number one thing my sister always says. And I think that, you know, as a person who works in the outdoors and staff, you do have a job, and I get it, but like, just do it in a respectful way. A lot of people always say, well, what can I do as an ally? What can I do as a human being? But it starts with your job too, you know, like, know what your job is. And if somebody is going to start praying and before a meeting happens, respect that. You know, it's just a common knowledge, common courtesy, I guess you would say. So that's just what I want non-natives to know. Just, you know, get it together.
You know, be respectful, not to be recording when certain songs. Let's just get that flow of that. Just don't record any songs, because these songs are, you know, pretty old and ancient, and only certain people can be able to sing them, and we don't want others like trying to replicate that. So just if somebody is going to sing, just turn all cameras and recorders off unless you have permission.
So what I'm hearing is a lot about the importance of respect, both in terms of allowing people access to their traditional spaces and respect around photography and recording. But there's also this other thing that I'm hearing, which is about relationship to particular places. And so the importance of allowing access to those particular places and understanding that there is a responsibility that Native peoples have to those particular places, which is why it is so important. And so I'm wondering, on that note, if you could talk a little bit more about how sustainability or environmentalism play out in the way that you understand the world or in your communities.
Okay, I would say that if we're talking about like ancient sustainability, I mean, that was the best because of the impacts that it had to our environment and the things that it enriched our lives with. I feel like probably like 98% of our culture was about food and gathering and preparation of food. And that entailed a lot of relationship to the land and understanding and tending to the land, because of course you want to do traditional burns in order to bring the livestock in and bring them closer so you don't have to go further out to hunt. You want to be able to make sure the salmon are in the river at certain times, right? Because, you know, they're resting so that they can spawn and make more salmon. There's all of this sustainability that we need to provide to our homeland back then that was so common and easy and a way of life. And I think that now in our communities, we are just trying to sustain our way of life. We're just trying to access spaces and keep our culture and revitalize it. And so we are learning our foods. We're learning how to prep these foods and how to sustain our people, because honestly, in this day and age, and what's been provided for us and our family have been very unhealthy choices, have been very, you know, poor for our spiritual health. and all of the foods provided by the world, or not by the world, but our environment, those are all spiritual foods. And those not only just feed your soul, but those feed the environment. And I think that sustainability for us nowadays is just reconnecting with those relationships and reawakening them. And I think that something that me and my sister kind of employed was this getting back to some of our cultural knowledge and making this Tule boat, which inherently gave us a relationship with the Tule and made us understand that, you know, although it's a great source, it also provides a home for other animals and for bugs, and we have to respect that. And, you know, we have to ask permission to go in these spaces. So we're learning about sustainability in a whole new way, because just even to gather with what my relative Robin was saying, you know, with the drought and everything, we're losing source. So it's harder and harder to sustain that relationship because our water source is gone. We make boats, but if there's no water to launch them, what good are those boats? You know, like it's really, we're really working on those relationships, and we're really focused on how we can sustain these past relationships that we had and carry them well into the future and make that as easy as possible. So for my community, you know, we do a lot of community outreach. And so that way we can really work on planting native plant gardens. We did restoration projects for our sacred shell mounds, and that's to give back to the land so that it will sustain for the next hundreds of thousands of years. And so I think that that's how we give back today. Then of course, I'm going to say prayer all day. We stay in prayer, and, you know, everything we do is with a prayer. And so I think that because of that, that's what sustains us and keeps us going. Because if we didn't focus on that, I think that this world would be a little bit harder to deal with, because there's a lot of no's in the world. And so we have to guide around them and sustain our way of life.
Wow, that was great. Beautiful words. We got to think about the generations after us, after we leave this earth, and what are we going to leave for them? You know, living in a modern day world, we forget about traditional knowledge and culture. And I see, you know, some of our kids, you know, falling into those cracks. So as adults, parents, aunties, and uncles, we have to step up and give those youth that knowledge so it isn't lost. This last spring, I was out gathering some sedge, some basket materials, and the place that we went and gathered, it was set aside 40 years ago. And the basket weavers before us said that we don't know who's coming in, but we need to keep this going. And you really get a connection with that land and those plants. And it's like those same roots that I was touching and I was digging up, my elder planted that for me. So it's kind of like we're doing the same thing for future generations. We're planting those seeds, and it's very important. And at the same time, not only am I you know, digging up roots, but also, you know, tending to the land and taking care of it, land management, so they can grow, you know, further distance for in the next couple of years. It's it was one of our biggest how do I say this? That's what we did as Native people, was we always tended our lands. We when before Europeans came over, it was like the gardens. It was beautiful, you know, because we knew what crops to be harvested at certain times of the years. And by burning, you know, we could have control of our animals, you know, that we use to hunt and whatnot. You know, just driving around and looking, you know, for our food crops. It's fall time. We're looking for our acorns, you know. We don't have that very much. So just planting the seed for future generations. Right.
I think that, like what my sister and my relative was saying, and like what I mentioned earlier, is that I was taught that, you know, about the 7 generations of Native peoples, they always refer to that. And what sticks out to me the most, that my grandpa instilled in me, is that you are the 7th generation. You meaning like me, yourself, anybody that's around you, because like I said earlier, you are influenced because you're taught by your parents, and you are taught by your grandparents and your great grandparents. And you're going to influence your children and your children's children and your children's children. So that's 3 generations that influence you, and you're influencing the next 3. And that's where you become the 7th generation. And I think that it's just super important to instill this, all these teachings and knowledge, not only about who you are, where you come from, what you got to do on a daily basis to adapt in this world, this 2-spirit world society where you have to keep a balance, a 9 to 5 as well. But also just the basics. Like I teach a lot to young kids, like, you know, where does your water come from that's in your house? Your house has so many gallons in it that you have to flush your toilet with, that you have to brush your teeth with, that you take your shower with, but also that you cook your food with, and now that you have to wash your hands a million times with. Where does that come from? And a lot of people, they look around like, well, you know, it comes from the house. Yeah, but where does it come from? There's a place that it comes from. And depending on where I'm at, I'll give you an example. When I was in the Presidio, I used to tell people all the time, it comes from Point Lobos. And then they're like, wow, I never knew that. It's so close to the ocean. Like, does it affect it? Does our waste go there? Then they started building all these questions. And I think that it starts somewhere. It's planting those seeds, like what my relative was saying, is that it's planting these little seeds of awareness so that they can last not only for us, but for millions of years to come, just like they have been before. And I think that it's just super important to know where your water comes from, to know, you know, I was telling my sister the other day, if everybody planted a tree that it came with like free Wi-Fi, everyone would be planting trees like crazy. But like, did you know that like not only do they give us food, but they give us oxygen so that we may live? So like maybe we should start thinking they have Wi-Fi, but really they're like giving us oxygen so we can start planting a lot of trees. Because once you click that, it's just the way that you click the knowledge to certain people, no matter what their age group is. And a lot of kids, when they're in middle school, they're always like, it's just an acorn. Like, why do you coastal natives like it so much? All you California natives, it's all you talk about is acorns. Okay, but let's talk about Ice Age, right? So like in that movie, what the heck was that squirrel like chasing around? An acorn. It was important in the Ice Ages. It's important now to us. And that's our food source. That was his food source in the Ice Age. So imagine that sustainability that one food gives a people, and it lasts for so long, and then it clicks. So that's what I mean by planting the seeds now, so that, hey, they can remember when they're in their 20s, like, hey, I remember that girl talked about an acorn, and now I know why that they're so important. Let me gather some, and let me find the local indigenous group and give it to them, because I grow them in my backyard and I don't do nothing for them. Beat the squirrels and give them to us. I'm just saying.
Which is a fantastic segue to our next question. I'm hearing a lot about relationships, relationships to other humans, relationships to non-human relatives. And I'm imagining that there are some folks who are listening right now who maybe are hearing this knowledge for the first time and are wondering, okay, well, I'm a non-native person. Are there ways that I can respectfully, appropriately partner with Indigenous communities? And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about ways in which non-native people can respectfully partner with Native communities.
I think it's very important to understand who the local tribes are and speak with those local tribes and understand what their needs are, because everyone's on a different journey, everyone's on a different time frame. So it's very good to understand where people are and how you can assist them. Sometimes I feel like with Indigenous communities, we like to do a lot of things ourselves. We don't like to depend on other people or rely on anybody else. So it's good to know what your strengths are and what your abilities are, so that we can best know how to utilize you as a source. I would say one thing that I heard recently through Atongo Gabrielino is that he said it's a good thing for non-natives to get involved with local cleanups, to get involved with local beach cleanups, local park cleanups, because you're cleaning up these spaces that we're eventually going to be praying in, and you are going to be responsible for these places around you. And so I think it's great to definitely do that. For sure. I think as a non-native, creating spaces so that we can get out the issues that affect us, I think that that is super amazing to provide space for that. A lot of the speaking engagements that I've been provided in the past have all been given by non-Indigenous people so that we can really put our fight forward and really accomplish the goals that we need to. And then I would say that if you can donate to your local tribes in any way, shape, or form, always do that, because we always need that in any capacity. And then definitely I would say be mindful, be very mindful of not overtaking any bounds, have a respectful relationship with people. You can have an understanding for culture and an appreciation for culture, but I think that you got to make sure that you remember it's not your culture and that you aren't the one, in charge. And so be very respectful in the relationships that you're building. And sometimes we dabble in a lot of different things. So to be mindful of people's time, that it is valuable. And so and also one thing that my sister told me is that she said, if you have any acorn trees or elderberry growing in your house or anything, and you tend to it yourself, share that resource. Share that resource with the local community, because sometimes they don't have access to all of those things. Like I know chia is really hard to find, just random things. And we have a follower to the Ohlone sisters. Shout out to the monkey flower, Emma. She actually grows sage in her garden, and it's her native plant garden. And then when it's ready to harvest, she gives it to us. And this way, it's going to a good cause. She's supporting the local pollinators in her garden. It smells really pretty, and it's going to our community. I would not suggest going out there and picking sage and then giving it to us. That's not what I'm suggesting. But if you have resource within your own native gardens, your own, maybe you have access to a botanical garden, maybe you work there, I don't know, but that's a great source. And that's how I can say you can help our communities.
I'll piggyback off that. I will say, reach out, find what territory you guys are living in. There's always a Native community around. I am pretty active in it's called a Pomo Weaver Society, and we're always looking for plants to harvest, whether it's willow or dogbane. We can't always go out to certain areas because it is blocked off. It is private property. So, if you want to help us preserve these beautiful, these masterpieces, let somebody know. We have a group on Facebook. You can reach out to me. I live in Santa Rosa area. You can reach out to me, Silva or Corinne. If you need somebody to come and, prune your bushes, let us know. We'll do it for free. We'll gladly do it. It's taking care of the earth and taking care of the environment. And it's also, fire control. Acorns, they're falling. We prefer, black oak or tan oak in my area. So if you have any of those, please let somebody know. We'll come and pick them up. I would also say, I know a lot of people, in my area, we go to parks. We have parks all around our neighborhood. Please, please, please pick up after your dogs. I am a person that I have my hands in the dirt because I'm picking acorns or I'm gathering roots, and to see that, it's kind of discouraging. It's like not having a respect for the land. It's not having a respect for the property. Your dog just goes and then you just leave it, so that would be, a really good help. And also, we do have some workshops, to educate our community about cultural knowledge. And I think that people have a better understanding of that, they're more willing to reach out and help us. And yeah.
So can you repeat the question? It was something about non-natives, right?
So what are ways in which non-native people can respectfully partner with Native communities?
So I totally think that everyone can help because we're all in this together, without you, there's no me, without me, there's no you type of thing. And I feel like, like I said earlier, if you have a big acorn tree in your backyard and you're like, hey, I have a big mighty oak back here and I have no use for it, come feel free to come in my backyard to pick them up, or I'll pick them up and leave a bag outside. Or, I have a lot of abalone and I seen you, gathering abalone, and I happen to inherit that from my grandma because she used to collect one every time because we live down the street from the beach and I don't have no use for it. And I remember receiving like 2 boxes of abalone. I was the happiest alone girl in the world at the time. It's things like that that they didn't know, and they just said, there was a time and a place to, have this, and I met you at the right time to give it to you. And I think that that's what we need to open up our eyes to more. Like, a lot of people don't understand how hard it is for Indigenous folks to go into their territories because, like Robin said, a lot of it has like, boundaries or stuff's closed and things like that. But not only do we have to fight all those red tapes because we don't have access to it, but we have an environmental impact because, me and my sister, we're in the Tule right now. That's like our thing. We're adapting it back and learning all that we can about that traditional knowledge to bring back to our people. And we learned that it's very important to the red-legged frog. I didn't know how important it was to the red-legged frog until I started working with Tule. But that's what happens. You learn everything that it is to know about this certain thing that you're gathering. And I learned that they need Tule as much as we do. And, they don't use it in the same way, but a lot of Tule, wherever you go, a lot of it is protected by the red-legged frog. So I hope they are thriving. But I want to be a thriving Ohlone and make a lot of Tule baskets and have Tule reeds that I could gather. I want to thrive just as much as them. So I think that I want to know, since I'm talking to like a lot of educators, how do we bypass that, or how do we come together? That's my question to y'all. Is a lot of people are always like, well, what can I do for you? My question to y'all is, how can we not have an impact to that red-legged frog, but show that we have an equal amount right to that Tule patch as the red-legged frog? How do we make that a balance? How do we parallel together? Because right now, I understand they're endangered species, but I feel like our culture has been in danger for 300 years right now. And the knowledge that we had thousands of years ago in the last 300 years, we're barely trying to catch up to that. So I feel like we're endangered as well. And to not have access to know everything as much as this beautiful red-legged frog, I want to be parallel with that endangered species. So, that's a question for y'all. Get to me, let me know, DM me, however you want to reach out to me. Let me know how we work with this parallel universe. Sorry, Abel.
Oh, no, we're good on time. So we wanted to now open it up for some questions. There's a lot that has been offered to us today. I have a couple of questions. So one of them asks, or I'll just read it completely. This person says, I have a question for them. I've been seeing a lot of acorns around this SF Bay area. Can I help collect them for people who will use them or eat them?
Ooh, so sorry. There are some workshops in the Bay Area that actually teach you how to do your own acorn. Before you collect, I will say make sure they have no holes in them. Because if you have one acorn that has a wormhole and you put it with the rest of your crops, your whole crop is bad. So you don't want to do that. And you have to collect them before the next rain. Otherwise, they're going to get moldy. You don't just make acorn mush. You can make bread, you can make muffins, you can make crepes, you can make miso soup. I mean, there's so many recipes. So, I mean, if you want to make acorn yourself, which I totally encourage you to do, so you have an understanding of what our people do and the process and how long it takes, I so encourage you to do it. So yeah, collect it for yourself.
So feel free to, for folks, you can add your questions. We have another question that asks, how do I contact the local people?
I think it depends on where you are. I know that I found tons of other Ohlone people by following just the hashtag. So if you hashtag, if you find out the Indigenous people of your area, I know that Abel put a link in there to kind of help you out to see like where you are on the map. If you hashtag once, like I hashtag Kumeyaay, I found all kinds of people because I wanted to give back because that's where I live now. So I think that that's like something that's super easy. Google helps out a lot. But I mean, always look at flyers if there's something going on, like a powwow is what's happening down here right now. It's powwow season. That helps when you go because then you start learning who's who and how to do things. But just be respectful when you do go out there.
Local museums.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Robin.
Oh, I was just gonna say local museums.
Most tribal nations have websites where you can reach out to people. And I would just add too that most folks that are involved in tribal government are very, very busy people. And so I would just add like patience and humility. And also there's a lot to be said for showing up at events. People that say like we're doing this event or we're trying to protect this place and like showing up continually. And so then people noticing you, and then those leaders who are very busy may take some time out of their schedule to speak with you. But I believe it was Carla that mentioned this, like folks are being pulled in many different directions all the time. So I think it's very important for non-Native folks to always remember folks are really busy. And if you don't get a response right away, it's not always necessarily personal, but people are very busy. So there's also some humility, I think, that's important to really hold into focus as well. So we're in the last couple minutes.
Well, I have a question for you, Abel, that was asked earlier during the keynote, and it touches on what's the proper term to use for, Native. Should it be Native American, American Indian, Indian? So that question was asked earlier, but we didn't have time to get it answered.
I like saying the Native peoples of the area. I like saying the Indigenous folks, Indigenous groups. I personally, I feel like it's a stab when people are like, oh, the Indians, they were here. But the one that really like after the stab and like a twist is when they call us ancients. There's this guy on YouTube that refers to my Rumsen ancestors as ancients, and I feel like when you put those words, it's like, especially ancient, like that means that we don't exist no more. That's like a term that like you were here and now you're gone, but I am very much alive and I am breathing and I am thriving. So ancient is like out. I don't like that. Sorry, don't like it.
Well, and for me personally, I think that it's another thing of how people identify themselves. I think that it depends on who you talk to and how they identify to their own indigeneity or their own aboriginalness. I feel like for like the older generation, they didn't mind the term Indian. I kind of find it endearing to call myself a little Indian girl, but I mean, that's just me being cute. I mean, for me, I would want to be known as an Aboriginal woman of the land. And I think that that's stronger because that says that I know where my place is and I know where I identify, and I didn't go anywhere. I didn't just arrive here. This is where I belong. And so I think it depends on your education of what you really know and how words were oftentimes used against us within treaties and the way that they worded things like Native American and and stuff like that. If you do your research, do some homework, you really kind of understand where these terms come from. And I think even for a short period of time, our people, because like Robin said, we had our hands in the dirt all the time. They used to call us diggers as a derogatory term. And then now I'm like, yeah, right, I am a digger. I want to be with my hands in the dirt because that's where your real connection is. So I really do feel that you have to be mindful, just like the way we move in the world today, where how people identify is how you need to respect and ask them, like, how do you identify, so that you can approach it in a respectful manner, because that's how the world works now.
I agree with Carla. Personally, I like to be known as Indigenous, but we all come from different tribes with different backgrounds, and we all had different names. You know, those were the names that archaeologists gave us because we all were in the language was similar, Pomo. It's just one big name that they grouped us under, but there's different names for them. So if you know somebody that is, you know, of Indigenous heritage, ask them, what do you want me to call you? Because that name is going to tell you what part of the land they actually came from. So you can be able to distinguish, you know, this person is from this area. So I would just ask the individual.
So on that note, I would like to invite all of you to extend our gratitude to Carla, Robin, and Desiree for all that they've shared with us today. And I also want to acknowledge that as we're having this conversation, there are Native people all around the world who are on the front lines of defending land and water. Right now, there are folks on the front line working to stop Line 3, folks in Hawaii who are trying to stop that 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea, the Apache Stronghold who are trying to stop the development on Oak Flat. And all of these are also opportunities where non-Native people are invited to respectfully contribute to protect land and water. So with that, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you to Zero Waste for hosting this panel today.
Thank you.
Shururu, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Honored to be here.
See you on the next panel.
Thank you all for your time. We'll stay in touch. Great panel. Thanks.
Thank you so much.